welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 282, and today's date is February 5th, 2014, and the title of this episode is The Countdown to the False Flag Event Begins. And I'm going to get into that a little bit later in this report, but before I get started, I just want to thank those people that donated. I really appreciate it. It helps the x22report.com site. It also helps the forum, which is called The People, and I really do appreciate those who have donated. Thank you very much. For those people who subscribe to YouTube, who've never visited the x22report.com site, you can come on over. I have tabs up top. I track the economic collapse, which is a timeline, a high-level view of what is going on. You can go on there. I continually update it, and I add more things into the timeline, and you can take a look at that. I also track products for inflation and deflation, and we also have The People, which is a forum of like-minded people talking about the economic collapse and many other issues. The forum is completely free to join. So you don't need any money or anything like that. All you need is some type of username that you want to be called by and put in your email address. If you want to make up an email account, you can do that. You'll receive the email with a password, and you can join in on the conversation. If you're a little hesitant about joining, which I understand, you can just go onto the forum and read what other people are saying. There's no problem in doing that. And then eventually you can, join in on the conversation once you feel comfortable. Let's get into the economic collapse news. And I reported in the United States before, for the holiday actually, that the holiday season was just terrible. And we all know this. I mean, retail stores are closing. Retail sales have been in a decline. People just don't have the money to spend. People went deep into their savings to pay for Christmas. During the Christmas holiday, I went along the streets, and normally I see boxes and bags and trash bags piled up. This year I didn't really see any of that whatsoever, and I know my house was very lean in what I was purchasing for the holidays also. And in Europe, of course, we have the propaganda, and it first came out that, their Christmas season's, that it was doing fantastic, and we're in a recovery. But what we really see is the Eurozone retail sales completely declined, just like the United States retail sales. And the official figures show retail sales across the Eurozone have sharply fallen in December of 2013. Retail sales across the 18-member bloc dropped by 1.6% in December. Germany posted a sharp 2.5% decline in December, while France saw a 1% fall for the month. So we can see that all the propaganda in the Eurozone showing that there is a recovery is completely false and made up. And if you really look at what's going on, you can see unemployment is continually going up. If you're unemployed, how are you going to pay for gifts for the holiday season? If every single country is in massive amount of debt and they're implementing austerity on the people, again, this makes it much harder for the people to live, and you know what they're doing. They are just buying what they need. They're buying food, they're paying their rent, and they're buying clothing, and pretty much, and fuel for their car to get wherever they have to go. And that's pretty much it. Otherwise, they are not running out buying the next TV, the next Blu-ray player. They're just not doing it right now. And the same thing in the U.S. If you do not have the money and you do not have the credit, you are not going out and purchasing. And this is why we saw people go into their savings to pay for this holiday season. And in Europe and in the UK, we see that people are taking out payday loans to pay their mortgages and their rent. They're going into their savings to pay for certain aspects of their life. And it is very difficult for these people to get by. And we can see that this is just ramping up. It's not getting better, it's getting worse. And as time goes on, the government officials realize that they cannot stop this at this point, and they realize that the collapse is coming. Now, ADP just put out their January employment for January, and what they're saying is the amount of jobs were about 175,000, and that completely missed because they expected 185,000, and Again, they're blaming this on the weather because it was cold, but we know what's happening here. There is no work. There are a lot more layoffs than there are people hiring at this point in time. But what do we understand? We understand that the unemployment, the extended unemployment insurance has run out, and 1.3 million people are falling off. And what's going to happen during the whole year is more and more people will be dropping off. Now, these people are not going to be counted. We also understand that Dell's going to be laying off 15,000 people, Macy's, J.C. Penney, and many other retail stores. So there's a lot of people not going to have work, and they're only going to get unemployment for about 6 months or so. But the first wave is here now. And what I find funny is I already see headlines out there. I saw this on Reuters saying that the U.S. employment seen rebounding in January because they already know that the people who've fallen off the extended unemployment is going to bring down the unemployment rate. And of course that is false. They didn't find jobs. People aren't getting employed. They've just fallen off and they're not counted anymore. So this is really false. It's an illusion, but they're already building this up saying, listen, the unemployment is going to be coming down. This could mean a rebound for the economy and things could be getting better. And we can see that this is a complete illusion and it is completely fake. Now, I've been talking about governments where they have this they have a huge amount of debt and they cannot sustain it on the revenue that they have. And what they end up doing, of course, is they tax the people, and we know this. The United States implemented FACTA, where they're going out to all the nations saying, report those people who have money in the banks there. If you have a dual citizenship, you will be, and you don't work in the United States, you work in another country, you'll still be paying taxes to the United States. So right now, Canada and Hungary, they signed FACTA, and this brings up the total number of countries that have joined FACTA up to 22 right now. And it was Canada, Hungary, just recently Italy have signed, and they will be trying to get every dime everywhere in the world because they understand as the debt continually rises and they need to keep these interest rates low or they can't make the payments. So they can't even make the payments right now, actually, if you really look at it. That's why they have to borrow more money, because the amount of programs and the amount of revenue coming in, they just don't match. And this is why the debt ceiling is always so important, because if they can't borrow the money, guess what? They can't pay the debt. They can't keep the government running. And right now they're trying to find money everywhere. And they really thought Obamacare was going to do it because there's so many taxes interwoven into the Obamacare law. And the Obamacare is not doing what they thought. It isn't driving the revenue in like they thought. And now they're going to be using different tactics to bring in revenue. I hear the president talking about climate control, and most likely you'll probably see some type of form of a carbon tax on every single person that they'll have to pay, because you have to remember, when governments get into trouble, they come after the people's money. Why do you think they have the MyRA? They're going after retirement funds. They're taking the cash and giving you worthless treasury bonds that are going to be worth nothing. They are already doing it right now because they need the revenue, and they're moving this forward. And you're going to see even more taxes come about. And you see this all across Europe and the United States, and this is not going to stop. Now, with Obamacare, everyone knows pretty much how I feel about it. If you don't know, you can go back to my previous reports and you can listen to how I feel about Obamacare. But they've taken a poll and they wanted to know, how do people really feel about Obamacare? Well, they don't feel that great about it. 51% still oppose the Affordable Care Act. They do not like it. They do not want it. And at the same time, 19% say the law is hurting their family. And in the long run, 37% say Obamacare will make their health care situation worse. So what's happening here is the American people don't want this, but the government is continually pushing this on the people, and they're not listening to the people because they don't care what the people say. They've already made the deal with the insurance companies. They have already put this in motion. They have already said, okay, if we can get everyone in on this, we can raise this much revenue from the taxes that are interwoven into Obamacare. And this is what the whole thing is about. It's not about giving you great health insurance, because if they were going to truly do that, they wouldn't penalize you if you didn't take it. They wouldn't have to have these hidden taxes inside the health insurance, and actually the health insurance would be affordable. You wouldn't have these high deductibles, and people would be able to really afford them, and you would be able to keep your doctor. You'd be able to actually use what you have. But none of this is true. So we can see what's really happening here. Again, it is a cash grab, and that's all it is. Now, we understand the reason for all of this because the economic collapse is knocking on our door. We get that. And all these agencies, the IRS, Department of Education, now the U.S. Postal Service, they have all purchased weapons and ammunition. And the latest is the U.S. Postal Service is currently seeking companies that can provide assorted small arms ammunition. And they've just put in a request. And the request says the United States Postal Service intends to solicit proposals for assorted small arms ammunition. If your organization wishes to participate, you must pre-register, and then you can start the bidding process. This went, let me see, the posted date was January 31st, 2014, and they want people to respond by February 10th. So they're giving them a short period of time here. And we've seen other agencies do the same thing. The Department of Education has been building a massive arsenal through purchases, and they spent around $80,000 on Glock pistols and about $17,000 on Remington shotguns. Back in July, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration also purchased 72,000 rounds of .40 caliber Smith & Wesson, following a 2012 purchase of 46,000 rounds of .40 caliber Smith & Wesson jacketed hollow point by the National Weather Service. So we can see what is going on here. They are arming the IRS. They're arming the Postal Service. They're arming all the agencies. And we have to think back that the Department of Homeland Security has also been contracting out and having contractors come in and guard these agencies with people, just in case the collapse does hit, which we know it's going to, and they will have some type of security in place. We also have to remember the Federal Reserve has also built their own private police force, and the President said, yes, the private police force of the Fed is just like any other police force, which it really isn't, because the Federal Reserve is not part of the government. It is a private corporation, and they have around 1,000 police officers ready to guard them, and they're hiring more. So we understand that something is going to happen, and that is the collapse, and they are getting prepared for this. Now, to get ready for this collapse, a Supreme Court justice confirms American internment camps will happen again. It is reality. While President Obama and congressional members have made an effort to convince their constituents that provisions in the National Defense Authorization Act will never be used against citizens of the United States, the fact is that the laws clearly allow for the detention, arrest, and detainment of Americans without charge or trial. Detainment and internment will be at the top of the Department of Homeland Security's to-do list. And when this collapse happens, there will come a time in America when panic grips the nation. There will be riots, violence, bloodshed resulting from any number of plausible scenarios like the collapse of our economic and monetary systems. When this happens, the government will implement their continuity plans. Martial law will be declared. The Department of Homeland Security will activate their already stocked and staffed Federal Emergency Management Agency refugee camps. And we've seen these in limited form during major storms like Hurricane Sandy, Katrina. Those who came to the FEMA for help reported that the facilities look like a concentration camp. And I don't know if you have seen this. I think most of you have. It is barbed wire. The barbed wire is facing in, and it does look like camps to keep people inside. But they were nothing compared to what happened in a situation where hundreds of thousands of people would need to be detained under a national emergency declaration. According to various sources and a ton of research over the years, FEMA camps are situated all over the country and are waiting for people to fill them. And this document that they have, this document makes it clear that the policies apply within the U.S. territory and involve the Department of Defense, support to U.S. civil authorities for domestic emergencies, and for designating law enforcement and other activities, including man-made disasters, accidents, terrorist attacks, and incidents in the U.S. and its territories. The document also makes reference to identifying detainees using their Social Security number. The manual includes the designation of civilian internees. In other words, citizens who are detained for security reasons, for protection, or because he or she committed an offense against the detaining power. And again, the president has always said that he will not use the NDAA, but again, those are just words. We have to look at the actions, and I always believe it's the opposite of what they're saying. And what he is saying is that he will use it when the time comes. When riots break out, when people are going crazy, they will declare martial law. You'll see the tanks on the street. You'll see local law enforcement in coordination with DHS patrolling the streets. Of course, there's not enough people out there, and this is why they're trying to disarm the American people. But you will see all of this, and they will try to get the many of the people into FEMA camps. And I reported on this before, and I think Dave Hodges has also, saying that the school systems have been set up to take your children to the FEMA camps, to lure the parents there, and to bring you in to the FEMA camps. Now, I would suggest making a plan if something happens and you hear on the news, the stock market has fallen, collapse, people are going crazy. I would make a plan for your children to meet you at a certain spot where you can pick them up, because you do not want them to be taken to a FEMA camp, so you have to go there, and eventually once you go there, they're not going to let them out. They're going to let you in. So this is what I've been doing with my children. We've made a plan. They know what to do in this circumstance. They look for their brother and their sisters. They get together and they go off to a certain location. And I told them that I will definitely meet them there, and you just hide. And this is what I want them to do. Now, we understand that all countries, because they understand that riots are going to happen, they understand the collapse is coming, they've been implementing draconian laws. And a couple of reports ago, I reported that Saudi Arabia has implemented a draconian law that if you insult the king, if you insult the government, you are a terrorist. Well, Bahrain has done the same exact thing. The king of Bahrain has approved a law imposing a jail sentence of up to 7 years and a fine of up to 10,000 dinars for anyone who publicly insults him or the government. The penalties apply to whoever has insulted in any kind of public manner the king of Bahrain or its flag or its national emblem. So we can see what's happening here. They realize what is happening. They realize that they need to control the masses here. And this is why many of the countries have set up anti-protest laws already. We have some of those laws in the U.S. where you can't protest if there is a government official close or near to you. Even if you don't know they are, you can't protest. This is why they put up protesting zones where you can protest and other zones you can't protest in. And this is why they are doing this. Okay, let's move on here. Now, we understand that Sochi Olympics are going to start on February 7th. And right now, a U.S. warship entered the waters of the Black Sea on Wednesday, and another ship is going to be joining this one. It is the USS Mount Whitney, and the other ship is the USS Rampage, which has not reached the area right now. The U.S. warships will not enter the Russian territorial waters, and they do not really understand what the mission is for these ships. Now, they're saying they're going to use them if they are needed for evacuation if there is some type of terrorist attack in Sochi. But we also have to understand that in the Black Sea, the Ukraine is right on the Black Sea. And going back in time to, I think it was 2008 or so, a U.S. ship did dock in a Ukraine port, and we can see that these ships might be used for something in the Ukraine, because we understand that the USA, the central bankers are pushing the protesters, the rioters, because they want to remove the Ukraine government, and now they brought in warships. It was perfect to say, listen, these ships are there to evacuate the people in Sochi, but they are going to be there until the 25th of February, and the mission is actually really unclear. The spokesman did say they might be used to evacuate people if a terrorist attack does occur, but we'll have to see what the real reason is, because they don't just put things in place for no reason. They are there for a reason, and we'll have to see how this turns out. Now, I've been talking a lot about Iran and how the peace deal's going forward, and they're talking about the nuclear peace deal, and I've been saying that's an illusion. So what I did was, there was this report out there about Iran where it says U.S. wishes won't come true at the nuclear talks. Now, what I did is I just substituted nuclear for central banks. And let me just read some of this to you. Iran, U.S. wishes won't come true at the central banks. Iran's foreign minister said Wednesday that Washington's wishes are unlikely to come true in talks between the Islamic Republic and world powers over its central bank. Mohammad Zarif indicated that the U.S. wanted Iran to give up major parts of its central bank, but said such demands won't be carried out. The interim Geneva Accord will last for 6 months as Iran and 6 nations group, the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council plus Germany, negotiate a final deal. In return, the U.S. and the EU simultaneously announced the lifting of sanctions on petrochemical products, insurance, gold and other precious metals, auto industry, passenger plane parts, and services. U.S. officials have repeatedly said they will seek to dismantle major parts of Iran's central bank. U.S. President Barack Obama said in December that if we could create an option in which Iran eliminated every single nut and bolt of their central bank, I would take it. This is what they're actually doing. They are trying to infiltrate the banks of Iran and trying to put all of their natural resources, their precious metals, all on the U.S. dollar. This is their plan. And will it go through? I don't believe it will, because the Revolutionary Guard, Rouhani, seem like they're, pushing back. The IMF, again, is in there looking at their banks at this time. They are looking to set their interest rates. We also have Russia making a deal with Iran to coordinate all their economic activity, and this will be a battle, and we'll have to see how this plays out. But they are preparing. They are preparing to get ready to go in the opposite direction if this doesn't work out. Now, I've been seeing this all over the net today, saying that there is some type of bank drill going to be held on February 15th and 16th, and there is the Bank of Albuquerque, the Bank of Arizona, the Bank of Arkansas, Bank of Kansas City, Bank of Oklahoma, the Bank of Texas, Colorado State Bank Trust, Carnival Hill Bank, Transfund, Home Direct Mortgage are all participating in this drill. Again, the 17th is President's Day. It is a 3-day weekend, and we'll have to see. I was looking to see if there are more banks in this, but we'll have to keep an eye on this for any type of false flag event that might occur. It doesn't seem like there's too many banks involved in this, so this might just be a small drill that they're having, but I like just to keep an eye on what is really going on here. Now, there is a report from NBC saying Americans are being hacked as they entered into Sochi. Thousands of athletes and visitors, arrived to the Winter Olympics in Sochi, and they are having their phones and computers hacked. Nightly news host Brian Williams revealed on Tuesday night that the private information on tourist electronic devices is being stolen by the Russian network the moment they turn on their devices. Now, the question I have is, first of all, if you have your phone in your hand and your computer, how does the Russian network get anything onto your system? Think about that for a second. Now, we understand the NSA has backdoors into all of these systems because they've made deals with the phone companies, the software companies, the computer companies. So we have to think, what is actually going on here? Is this an indication that they are trying to demonize Russia in hacking into people's personal devices? Because something just doesn't appear on your phone out of nowhere. If you have a backdoor entrance into the system and software already installed on the phone, the computer, your tablet, or whatever you have, yes, something can be done. And we know the NSA does have the ability. And this goes on to say that malicious software hijacked our phone before we even finished our coffee, stealing my information and giving hackers the option to tap and record my phone calls. Well, I don't know how they're doing this, because it's hard to believe that Russia has the ability to get into every single one of these systems when the NSA already has the back deals created and the firmware on all the phones and the firmware and the software on all the computers, because everything that we've learned in the past is that computers were intercepted and they put their software and their backdoors on computers. Phones, they have made deals with software companies and phone companies to have backdoor access. They already have all the encryption keys, the methods to encryption, so they can decode anything. So really, I would say this is an NSA type of action at this point. And why I'm saying this is because what has happened is there is another document taken from Snowden that the NSA engaged in internet false flag attacks. Among the methods listed in the document were jamming phones, computers, and email accounts, and masquerading as an enemy in a false flag operation. And we've been seeing this all over the place. We've been seeing the Syrian Electronic Army. We've been seeing China. We've been seeing Russia. And it doesn't make sense. Of course, they're reporting that, we've seen where these attacks are coming from, but I hate to say this, you only can see the last server the attack came from. You cannot see where it started, and these advanced hackers or cyber attack organizations are very sophisticated. It is very hard to track them because they bounce the attacks off many, many servers. So what they're reporting is the last server they see the attack coming from. They don't know where it originates from. And what we're seeing now from this report, from Edward Snowden's released files, is that these spy agencies have been doing it, and they've been showing that, oh look, China's been attacking, Russia's been attacking, the Syrian Electronic Army has been attacking, because they're trying to demonize those countries without a private Western central bank. And this is proof right now that they actually have been doing it. And they've been doing this to build up the next false flag event, which is a cyber attack and could include chemical and biological. Now let's talk about the countdown to the false flag event. Now ABC recently has taken a poll about how people feel about going into Syria if they do not remove the chemical weapons. Do you think we should strike? And who should decide this? And the poll, and I do believe that the government instructs the news agencies to do these polls because they want to get the beat of where the people are, where they are, and how they think, and what they need to do in reference to the false flag. because if they see that the people say, 90% say, listen, if they don't remove their chemical weapons, we should strike them, they won't do a false flag event, in the country because there's no need for it. But what we're seeing is that nearly 80% of Americans, and this is an NBC poll, nearly 80% of Americans believe President Barack Obama should receive congressional approval before using any force in Syria. 50% of Americans believe the U.S. should not intervene whatsoever. So they are getting the information now, and they're seeing like, okay, we are not going to be able to pull this off. So the only way to convince the rest and have this make the decision much easier is to have some type of false flag event here in the United States. Now, what is happening in Syria is that they missed the deadline to remove the chemical weapons, and we're seeing the propaganda. Kerry's out there saying, we're going to take action. We're going to go in with the UN. We're going to go in and use military options to go into Syria. And if Syria has missed this deadline, and the next deadline is in March. So what they're saying now is Russia is saying that they are trying to ship the chemical weapons out. They're doing the best they can, and what is happening is they continually are being attacked by the rebels, and it's slowing the movement of the chemical weapons, and they're trying to move them as fast as possible. And the United States is saying, listen, Syria has all the equipment it needs to carry out the operation, and they should be able to do this very quickly. And of course, they're going back and forth saying, the rebels are attacking us, the roads aren't safe, it's a security problem, and the U.S. is saying, no, they have the equipment, you're just stalling, and that's what you're doing at this point. And we can see they're building up the propaganda. They're in the Geneva II talks, which are going pretty much nowhere. They built up the propaganda of the Syrian Electronic Army. They're building up the propaganda the Assad has committed war crimes, and they've been putting this out into the media. And this is what we're seeing right now. Now, Mike Rogers was out there saying the administration red tape is leaving terrorists on the battlefield, and he's afraid that all of these terrorists will be coming home to the United States. And Rogers said that individuals who would have been previously removed from the battlefield by U.S. counterterrorism operations for attacking or plotting to attack against U.S. interests remain free because of self-imposed red tape, and he's very worried that these terrorists are going to be running free and they will make their way back to the U.S. And we've seen many, many reports about this, and I've been discussing this quite a bit. But what has come out today is that the U.S. is going to award a $90 million contract for bioterror treatments. Now we have to think back. Clapper has already come out saying that Assad has chemical and bioweapons, and they are hidden in the Alawite section of Syria. And I reported on this way back in my reports, where CNN had intel, and there was another report that because Assad was giving up their chemical weapons, they were developing terror weapons instead. And now we see that he has both. And they're awarding this on new treatment against two potentially feasible bioterrorism agents. Well, I guess they know what they are already, because they're going to be doing the false flag event. The contract awarded marked a new investment in the broad spectrum of bioterrorism, and there is one company called Hawaii Biotech. It's going to receive about $7.4 million to prepare a possible countermeasure for anthrax toxins. And the other company is Medicines Company owned, and it's a Carbavance, and they're getting about $19 million to develop some of these bioterrorism agents. Now, let's take this another step forward. So we understand we have the bioterrorism weapons hidden in Syria. We have the chemical weapons hidden in Syria. If we go back in time a little bit, reports have come out saying that we have Iranians running free, in the U.S. We have other terrorists running free in lone wolf groups. Some of them are bomb makers, and they can't be tracked. They don't know where they are. And right now, the FBI is monitoring fighters trained in Syria, and they are saying they have returned to the U.S. U.S. federal counterterrorism authorities are tracking as potential threats a dozen or so ex-rebels trained in Syria who have returned to the United States. It's probably one of the most significant threats we're dealing with, a high-ranking U.S. intelligence official said. In excess of 50 Americans have traveled to Syria to join the efforts to topple President Assad's regime. According to officials, some of these U.S. fighters may be part of al-Qaeda's affiliate group, and they're saying they are here in the United States now, and they are trying to find them. And what they are saying is not all U.S. citizens fighting in Syria are Muslims or Syrian American. And they're saying that some of them are extremists, they've been radicalized, and they are very worried about the people returning. And those who have returned already, they lost track of. And they're trying to find the individuals right now. And we can see they're monitoring some of them that they know where they are, and these other fighters that have returned from Syria, they have lost track of. So we can see how they are building this false flag event up, and we realize what is going on. These Geneva talks are going to continue, I believe, next week. They're going to result in absolutely nothing. Nothing will happen. The whole point of Geneva 2 is to remove Assad. Kerry has said this, the U.S. government has said this, and we realize that is what's happening. They also realize that they can't keep the system going. I mean, we see what is happening around the world. Everything is decline mode right now. Sales, the amount of people unemployed, everything is not the same of what the government officials are saying. The illusion that they have created is starting to fall apart. And they know this. The people in the Middle East, in Africa, are fighting back. It's getting difficult to maintain the infrastructure of what they have to keep the dollar propped up. And just one of those nations, if Iraq or Lebanon or Libya should fall, and the people of those countries, which they call them al-Qaeda, which is really the people fighting back and wanting their countries back, and they want the central bank out of it. If they fall, this will start an avalanche of everyone returning the U.S. dollar to the United States. Because if one nation falls and the people take over, they will remove the central bank. They will no longer use the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency to sell the oil. They will tell every single other country you can use whatever currency you would like, or they will make a deal with China and they will use the petro yuan. Once this happens, those countries will stop using the dollar. We see in Africa already, countries have already started to change over their reserves. They're removing the U.S. dollar and they're ramping up and bringing in the yuan, because Kenya has become the clearinghouse for the yuan. So we can see what is happening right in front of us. This is every single day something new happens, and they are getting ready. They are counting down for the false flag event. Now, I've said this before, this false flag event will most likely be a multi-pronged type of event. It will consist of a cyber attack. They will hit the financial institutions. They will hit the stock market. We'll most likely see something with bioterrorism and chemical weapons. They might even bring in a dirty nuke, because we could see from my past reports that they've been setting all of this up, and we need to be prepared. You need to be ready. You need to make sure that everything is in place, because we do not know when this is actually going to occur. This could happen tomorrow. It could happen next month. It could happen 6 months from now. But this starts the countdown to the next event. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.